After arriving in Muscat, this part of the trip saw me head north to Sohar, spending the night before birding the next day up near the border with the United Arab Emirates. I then headed through the mountains to Bala. I have no idea how I got to Bala as I got lost so many times. I had a quick morning's birding around Bala before picking Dave up in Nizwa. From Nizwa we headed back up into the local mountain plateau before taking a long drive over to Al Had on the northeast tip of Oman. A few birds here and a nice cup of tea, and we headed back to Muscat. Another 1,000 miles of driving over 5 days. Arriving mid-afternoon in Muscat, I raced to my accommodation in Sohar in order not to miss my new favourite TV programme on the Saudi anti-terrorism channel. I then turned over to see what was new on the Syrian medical channel before hitting the sack. I drove up to the UAE border first thing to Katmat Melaha, a site featured in the birdwatching guide to Oman, but seemingly just an area of unremarkable vegetation. I got quite a few nice sightings though, but the specialist birds here were Asian desert warbler and Monetry's warbler, both seen, but too skittish for the lens. Heading back south, the next stop was at Liwa. It was blowing a gale, but I struggled up the beach to where over 1,000 terns were roosting. On the way up though, I experienced two rather odd happenings. First of all, passing up and down offshore were a procession of oil tankers that had obviously evaded Iranian hijacking, and of course, a man out walking his bull. If walking your bull up the beach wasn't strange enough, another man then appeared in a very nice Mercedes, got out, and asked to look through my telescope at the passing ships. He then asked how much my telescope and binoculars were worth, and immediately offered to buy them from me, and invited me back to his house for the rest of the day and an overnight stay. I politely declined all three offers, although he didn't seem to understand why a birdwatcher might not want to sell their optics while on a birding holiday. Well, after all the excitement, I managed to retain all my optical equipment and scanned through the terns to find 11 different species, including Saunders tern and, a lifer for me, around 20 white-cheeked terns. You can just about manage to pick them all out on the video, except distinguishing between Saunders and little terns. After the bracing sea air, I had a long trek through the mountains to Bala. I have no idea what route I took as I kept getting lost. My confusion wasn't helped when I stopped at this shop for a coffee, only to be told that they didn't sell coffee. I would have given it a 1-star review on TripAdvisor, but I had no idea where I was at the time. By sheer fluke, I did end up at Bala before nightfall and settled into my hotel room for some more channel hopping. Early the next morning, I had enough time to head up into the Akdar Mountains to get a view of the valley below and to visit the 500-year-old mountain village of Misfat al-Albrihin, where mountain springs provide water via irrigation systems for tiny crop-growing terraces. The vegetation can also be a migrant trap for birds, but I didn't see much. However, it was interesting roaming around the hillside terraces and old buildings, and I did pick up a new bird for the trip in the form of a pair of Indian silverbills. After trying out the local cardamom coffee, the jury is still out on that beverage, it was time to pick up Dave from his coach in Niswa. Dave lucked out, as the oil company's coach has never broken down while ferrying him from the middle of nowhere to Muscat, but on the one day it broke down, he was being picked up in Niswa, where it had come to a grinding halt. We immediately took a bit of a nose around Niswa and its fort and souvenir shops, but were glad we were heading back up into the mountains for the night when we saw the state of the local Niswa accommodation. Stocking up with supplies, it was obvious that Dave had gotten into some really weird Omani habits, as he bought this packet of what seemed to be raw whitebait as sustenance for the next few days. Driving up above the Sake Plateau at 2,000 metres, a local speciality, a Hume's wheatear, was quickly found, followed by a morning wheatear. We eventually found our way to the Jabal Akdar resort, where bed and board for the night cost about the price of the whole holiday put together. So, we feigned interest in a romantic dinner for two, snuck a photo at the viewpoint, and then went back to find our modestly priced grand hotel and eat a modestly priced forgettable meal. Back up to the hills in the morning, new birds included red-tailed wheatear, striolated bunting, and this plain leaf warbler, before we headed downhill and then back up a local wadi for a few more bits and pieces and some daredevil goats defying gravity. There's always one that has to spoil the video. Dirty boy! But look at the glint in his eye. Also seen in this wadi was a small fish. Oman has only 5 species of freshwater fish, and this endangered Cyprinian Microthalum muscatense, basically an Omani minnow, is one of them. It's not really surprising it's endangered, given there wasn't exactly much water, it was drying up quite rapidly, and the previous day Dave seemed to have bought a bag full of them to eat. By midday it was way too hot for anything, other than sitting in an AC-conditioned car for the 5-hour drive to Al Had on the northeastern tip of the country. More gulls and terns greeted us in the morning at Al Had, with the addition of Steppe and Pellis's gull to the photography collection. Desert wheatear and lesser short-toed lark were found in the scrub. We moved on in search of crab plover and found plenty of crab plover fodder, but no plovers. We inquired of a local fisherman named Hamsik, and he told us the crab plovers would be on the far side of an island which we couldn't see. Feeling sorry for our hopeless plight, he offered us a cuppa, and we sat and contemplated a crab plover-free life. Tea break over, we started on the long journey back to Muscat, stopping off at Sur, where the legendary Sinbad is supposed to have been based. Dave decided that he wanted a game of hide and seek, and so he asked an osprey to play with him. Resuming our journey, Dave almost immediately went back into hiding when he saw a tiger at the side of the road. Our final stop came when we couldn't resist the smoke rising from the Al Mutaka dump, and we detoured to see a few more steppe and imperial eagles, but also around 250 Egyptian vultures. A bonus was the sight of a sand partridge calling from the top of a nearby hill. With Dave having left Oman the previous night, I spent a final morning at Al Qum Park. The park had a variety of different habitats and provided me with more bird species than any other site on the whole trip. The parkland itself held a number of common Omani birds. The less kept areas provided another suite of birds, including a pair of green bee-eaters excavating a nest hole. The park is also adjacent to the sea and contains a large tidal inlet where gulls and terns were roosting. Finally, the last habitat in the park is a big lake, which proved attractive to a variety of water birds. Well, I thought the trip would end on a high with these great views of an Indian pond heron, but on driving to the airport, a disgusting smell started to permeate the car. Further investigation revealed a mostly uneaten bag of whitebait, and so the trip ended with a visit to a rubbish bin and a £20 cleaning charge from the car hire company.